Adam Schechter will break stuff on ESPN, and he'll be the first one to put the information out. That's really what I consider breaking the story. So I was the first person to do that. I was the only reporter on the scene for hours, and I was the only reporter that had actually been in the apartment. It wasn't like a grand tour. It was, I stepped in the apartment because I was there so early when this was all happening. Yeah, it is one of those things in journalism that makes you say, you know what, I'm proud of the work, but then you remember that there are 17 victims, and you know you always have to consider that when you're talking about the case.
No, absolutely. I mean, so it was obviously the first serial killer story that you had covered. What was the city like when the story was breaking? Like, what were the residents feeling collectively? Because I often think about, I mean, Milwaukee's not the biggest city in the world. Like, you know, it probably feels like one of those cities in the United States, and there's a few cities like this that feels like a small town, even though it's a city. So there must have been some sort of connectivity among the residents there in their collective sort of grief, outrage, or at least fascination with the case. And can you give me an idea of what the culture was like surrounding the case at that time?
Absolutely. You know, that is, and I'm happy when people ask that question, because that matters. And the reason that matters is because this is the Midwest, a city of about 600,000 people in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when being gay was, for many people, for most people, I'm going to say, was a very closeted life. There were people that really felt they had to live two lives. You know, there was the person they were at work, and then they were the person that they were when they were out socializing in the community. So that really was the setup. We're a very conservative town, and you know it was the Midwest in the, what can I say, in the late 80s, early 90s. I think what struck us so much about Dahmer was that there was such a, this can't possibly be happening here kind of a feeling.
Yeah, and you know, Toronto had its own case, the McArthur serial killer, and I know that the gay community there were kind of outraged because the police they seem to drop the ball. Now, I've heard you on an interview. You don't want to be too quick to throw the police under the bus, and I understand why. The creative license that Ryan Murphy took when he made with the Dahmer series on Netflix. I don't want to disparage this man, but I felt that because we're living in the times that we're living, he put a lot of the focus on bad cops and the racial element. And the racial element I can understand, but the bad cop thing, you take some issue with that because it's not as cut and dry, and they weren't as bumbling. Like, they looked like they were from Mayberry, like they were so bumbling, right? Like, so.
Well, that's the way it was portrayed in the movie, and I take issue just with that kind of portrayal, that they were, you know, bumbling and answering this call. I don't see that that way at all. What I see is people who want to use what we know now, how woke we are, if I can use that awful, you know, expression, how woke we are in 2022 to judge something that happened back in 1991 and earlier. And I don't think it's fair to do that.
That's called presentism, by the way. I think Bill Maher just coined the term presentism.
Someone did tell me this. I have to be cool now in future interviews and use the word, but I have to study up so I don't sound like I just learned it from, you know, I'm today years old when I learned it, right?
Yeah.
The issue with talking about what did the police do and looking at and examining at what the police did that night when they had Connor X into some phone and they returned him to Jeffrey Dahmer. I've spent a lot of years examining that particular incident, interviewing people, and I don't just mean talking to the two officers. I mean, I spent time talking to the ambulance crew that was there, the neighbors that were there that didn't step forward and say anything. You know, the deal with Dahmer, James, he was a master manipulator. He's a killer. He's a murderer. He is a guy who was so good at what he did that he went undetected from 1978 until 1991. I mean, he was good at blending. So when these two officers are standing there, they're talking to a guy who's saying everything that appears to be the right thing. He is hysterical. He's saying, look, this is my boyfriend. Come, and they asked if they could go up to the apartment. A lot of cops wouldn't have done that. So they went up to the apartment. What did they see in the apartment? They see Conorak synthesis phones, clothes folded neatly at the edge of the sofa. They see Polaroid pictures that Dahmer has taken of Conorak in very sexualized kind of poses. And Dahmer says, we were just kind of doing some photos. And Conorak, because now, again, Dahmer's telling them he's drunk. But the reason he's not verbal is he already has a hole drilled in his head. And he is.
Did they not see the hole in his head?
No, tiny little drill. Dahmer was experimenting with trying to mummify his victims. He's trying to figure out how he could keep people with him so that they wouldn't ask anything from him. So that was part of the issue. So and Conorak isn't really speaking, but he's also not trying to run away. He's not trying to signal to the police like, get me out of here.
But he was drugged at the time, and Dahmer said he was drunk. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Did the I thought a brilliant performance in that series was sorry, everything I do, by the way, on Blackballed is from memory. I don't use notes because I find them distracting. But I believe her name is Niecy Nash.
Yes.
Her performance, while amazing, I just want to know how accurate her role was, because they depicted a neighbor of Dahmer who could smell basically the dead bodies, who could hear him use his power tools, who could see people or hear people screaming and running from the apartment. And despite the brilliant performance from Niecy Nash, how accurate is that as far as the portrayal of what her role was as the neighbor of Jeffrey Dahmer?
Well, it's inaccurate completely. It's not what happened. But remember, Ryan Murphy made a movie. He didn't make a documentary, and he never said he did. So if he wants to retell the story any way he wants to, he gets to do that. What I'm saying is this is what was happening that night was very, very different than what is portrayed in the movie. The first 5 minutes of the movie shows Niecy Nash as this character, Glenda Cleveland, knocking on Dahmer's door, having a conversation. He offers her a sandwich. None of those things ever happened. I'm not aware that the two of them ever met, because she did not live next door to Jeffrey Dahmer. She lived in the apartment building across the alley from Dahmer's apartment building. And I don't think they ever had a conversation.
As much as I understand the creative license, and by the way, we have a viewer here that seems to be a big fan. Hello, Miss Ann. This is a dream to hear you speak. Thank you. She's a documentary junkie. Yep. Thank you, Leanne. But the creative license that people take, I find it annoying when I find out in hindsight how much of a license they took.
Yeah, you feel kind of cheated, right?
Pardon me?
Kind of feel cheated, right?
A little bit, not just because it didn't happen the way that they said, but they used her character as a launch pad to delve into the racial component of the Jeffrey Dahmer killings. Now, I understand that in reality, whether or not it was reported like this or not, and honestly, I don't remember. 31 years ago, I don't recall being a 15-year-old that was really into details of news reports, but I don't recall the Jesse Jackson part of this. I don't recall there being a big swelling up of racial tension because of this. I would understand if that happened, because he did target a very vulnerable community. We're talking like right during the AIDS crisis, right? Magic Johnson was just about to be announced that he had HIV, and if you're Black and if you're gay, in the late 80s, early 90s, you're probably not, you're a marginalized demographic. Absolutely. So to target that demographic as a serial killer, obviously there's a motive there that says this would be easier than targeting Johnny White from the suburbs, right? Like, this is just easier. Right,
but what we can't forget, James, is that I have to remember this is a podcast, and when it's like sitting at the bar where I say, "Hey, wait a minute, though."
No, please do it. I want my podcast to feel like a bar. I do.
You know, he wasn't attracted to Johnny White Guy, and
Right.
it wasn't, you know, that's the whole issue right there. Dahmer wasn't getting rid of a population that he didn't think should exist. He was very attracted to African Americans and to Hispanics and to the Hmong population. He was attracted to men that looked a certain way, that had a certain build. He did, you know, it's quite the opposite. It wasn't that he hated people who were Black. That was his preference. Those were the men that he was attracted to. The racial piece of this happens when people go back and say that if Dahmer had been Black and had some of the same experiences, some of the same interactions in court, maybe even the interaction with the police, and had been Black, that would have been different. That he was more easily believed because he was white. I mean, I'm telling you that that's the argument that I'm hearing, but I don't buy it.
Well, there's Wayne Williams, right, out of Atlanta.
Exactly. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. That argument doesn't hold water for me.
Again, the book came out this month, right? The book is called Monster: The True Story of the Jeffrey Dahmer Murders.
The book actually came out at the end of last year.
I'm
Came
sorry.
out in October of last year.
This is why I should. This is why I need to get used to notes, Annie.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. If you want to call it a new release, I'll be all excited. That's all right.
Well, is it? Are you experiencing a renaissance of sales because of the movies?
Well, of course. I mean, you know, I wrote this book in '91 when there was, you know, I mean, now there's Kindle. There's, you know, I recorded the audio book so that people can listen to the book read by the author since it's told in the first person, because it's the story of my path covering this story over the years. So, you know, but I think we're also experiencing a surge in this interest in true crime podcasts. Look what just came out of, I mean, the podcast Serial started with one case, and that case has now made international news.
And it created an entire genre at the same time.
And so I see that, and I think that I'm also there's a younger audience now that has an opportunity to be exposed to the Dahmer case that didn't know anything about it before, and now there is an opportunity to talk about it again. I just my concern, and again, I don't fault Ryan Murphy for making a movie. He wanted to make a movie, but if people who don't know anything about the case are watching that movie as their Bible for how this case went, that's just not true. And that's the part that's tough for me, because the book that I wrote takes you from the night that I got the call, the tip call, to go to the apartment to see what was in there.
I think it would have been a really good idea to it would be interesting. I mean, look, the movie's out. I actually thought the series was really interesting and entertaining to watch. I did get annoyed with the creative license stuff at the end of it. Like, I don't blame him for making a movie, but, and I hesitate to use this word, but I'm just going to use it. Listen, Reimer, I liked your movie. I thought it was cheap. The whole, because it seems like most of the creative license was centered around present day social issues in order to prop up that part of the story. And that's what I found a little cheap from it. But, but nonetheless, that's why I would give it an 8 out of 10 instead of a 9.5 out of 10 or something. But it was still a great series.
Not exactly an easy story to tell, James. Not an easy story to depict. I mean, there have been many depictions of the story over the years. There have been the documentary by Joe Berlinger is the first feature kind of film that I've ever participated in when it comes to Dahmer. I've done interviews for other things, but I never wanted to be part of something that would be embarrassing to me or make me feel like I somehow got away from the journalist part of my work and got into the entertainment part of the work,
And the Joe Berlinger documentary, Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes. One of the reasons why it was I was really excited to have you on today because it's premiering today, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah, on Netflix. So that's a little bit of a coup for us. I did my Annie deep dive, and I noticed. Yeah, no, it's okay. It was a good deep dive. It's good. It's a good one. But one thing that stood out, because I've created a document, I produced a documentary before, and it's not an easy task. And it wasn't the kind of documentary that this is. But one thing that I really appreciated that you saying was that Berlinger really stayed with your research as almost like a barometer for accuracy. As a way, that's my words, not yours, but you really respected that he utilized your research in a way that was accurate. He involved you in the film. He understood that since you were there and you reported on it, that you provided an invaluable piece of that documentary. How was the experience working with him? And am I communicating that level of respect that you had for him in a correct way?
Oh, absolutely. In my life and in my line of work, I don't get to work with a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Certainly not somebody of the caliber of director of Joe Berlinger for anything. And what I loved about working with his team was the fact that they really were so committed from the very first meeting we had together. They were committed to, is this factual? Okay, well, you say you have this document. Well, where did that document come from? Can we definitely track where it came from? They were very concerned at making sure they weren't using any information that that was made up. They wanted to make sure that there was no dramatization here. So it is working with them was a pleasure. Listen, sometimes people that make these serial killer films, you just don't know what you're going to get. And he really did a documentary. I mean, it comes off like a film. The backdrop to the documentary is hearing Dahmer's own words in these tapes that Wendy Patricus was able to get, and along with some other people that the team worked with. So you're able to hear us talking about our interactions with him, but then you also hear him. And this is a first. I've never seen this. I've never seen any kind of a production that's been put together like this. This is what he did with the Ted Bundy tapes and what he did with the Gacy tapes. So I was very impressed at their efforts to say, let's make sure that we're staying true to what actually happened. Very
when
little
you
in this thing too. I mean, there's not, they're not reenacting tons of stuff. I mean, it's pretty much you're hearing us tell our part, and then you hear from Dahmer's own mouth what happened.
Why do you think we are so fascinated with serial killers?
Boy, Victor Schwartz, my dear departed father, would love to know the answer to that as well, I think, because he was hoping for something a little different after all the really expensive education spent on the child. But you know what? I think that because it's the same reason you can't drive down the highway when there's a wreck on the side of the road, because everybody's stopping to look and see if they can see something. I think that we're just fascinated by it. I think we also, this tends to happen in places where people say exactly what I did up at the top of our conversation, which is, it's Milwaukee, it's the Midwest. Nothing happens here. And, little did we know that we were going to join the ranks of a lot of other really, cities that people may not have heard a lot about until something awful happened there, like Uvalde. No one knew where Uvalde, Texas was, how long ago. Kenosha, Wisconsin, when we had riots after George Floyd, and then after a very high profile shooting here. I mean, I think that people are fascinated at the idea that they don't think it can happen where they were, but getting to have that front row seat to it is fascinating.
Yeah, and a lot of serial killers have made their mark, or whatever you want to call it, in small towns. I'm just looking right now because I forgot his name, so I had to look it up. But Ed Gein.
Oh yeah, no, another
Plainfield, Wisconsin. Yeah. Even the name of his town has the word "plain" in it.
Plainville. Hmm.
Plain fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's just it's crazy, because these smaller cities where it's very leave it to beaver until it's not.
Yeah.
But remember, the FBI estimates that at any one time there are over 50, at least 50 serial killers operating in this country. So,
Wow. Really?
sure. I mean, living lives of quiet desperation, I suppose, right?
Active serial killers?
Mhm. You check
Yeah,
me
I
on
don't.
that because check me on that and make sure. But back when I wrote the book, they were
Mhm.
estimating, that was the estimate then. I can only imagine that it's even larger now.
Do you think that like I watched I think it's called is it called Mindhunter where they talked
Yes.
about they profiled the people who invented profiling.
Yes. Hmm.
Was there was there an I don't recall this point, so I'm sorry if it's a sort of Captain Obvious moment for me, but was there um did they know that there was a serial killer on the loose before they arrested Jeffrey Dahmer?
No, and a lot of that goes to how Dahmer chose his victims. Jeffrey Dahmer, in his confession, said he deliberately chose people who he thought would not be missed. We're not saying those people didn't matter. We're saying Jeffrey Dahmer thought those people would not be missed. And what that means is he's having a conversation with somebody at the bar. And he says, "What was it like, when you came out to your family?" "Oh, my family was great, terrific. We're very close. We love each other." That person was not going to be a victim of Jeffrey Dahmer. He chose people
Oh.
who he felt were estranged from their families, who were very lost like he was. So that was, he chose people who were really under the radar in society to begin with. Also, he was preying on the gay community.
Mhm.
You have to remember that if you were gay in Milwaukee in the late 80s, early 90s, you may not even want to report a crime that happens to you to the
Mhm.
police because you are living such a quiet life, an unassuming life.
Yeah, and I liked how the upbringing of Dahmer was sort of left inconclusive in the series in a way. Like I mean, the audience was left with this idea that it could have been a combination of the mom
Mhm.
being a little bit crazy and kind of a prescription pill addict, and it could have been contribution of the dad, who I'm leaning towards, who allowed his son to like dissect roadkill because but I don't know how accurate that is either. I remember hearing about that, so I think that that's fairly
Well,
accurate.
it actually is true. I mean, and that's, I mean, to me, that's something we in the investigative parlance call a clue. But I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that the kid is he was saving roadkill. So Dahmer wasn't killing and torturing animals, which can be common with some serial killers.
Right.
Dahmer saved roadkill, brought it home. Dad's a chemist, and he shows him how to skin the animals, make
Right.
pelts, that kind of thing. Look, I was raised like, Eloise at the plaza. So I'm not the guy to ask about whether or not, it's okay.
What does that
teach
mean?
kids.
Did you wear white gloves on Sundays? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, there's a little princess thing kind of happening there.
Yeah.
And I've completely disavowed my husband of that image. He's just like, I don't even believe that. But no, it is. I think that there's a role to play on both sides of that family. But James, think about how many people, you know, grow up hunting with their fathers and they gut the deer and they do all this. And then you've got other kids who are born to mothers that are on psychotropic drugs when they're pregnant. And these people don't end up becoming serial killers. This guy did. So, while these could have been factors, Dahmer was really mad about that. He was so mad. He was mad at me because your life isn't weird enough until a serial killer is like mad at you.
Yeah,
Dahmer
really.
was upset with me because he didn't like that in the book I talked about the fact that so many psychiatrists, so many forensic psychologists believe that the way that he was raised by his mother and his father contributed. It's not the only reason, but certainly contributed to the crimes that he later committed. And Dahmer reached out to me and called me and said, from prison before he was murdered in 94, and said, when you're out talking about this book, people are going to ask if you talk to me. So you can say yes and tell everybody that I said I'm the only person responsible for what I did, not my mom and dad, not anybody else. And that was it. It was the weirdest, strangest phone call of my life. But, you know, it was, but it was, I mean, how weird is that he had such a, you know, a soul or some kind of feeling about his parents, yet the things he did to human beings were unspeakable.
Yeah, but we have a tendency as human beings to just view people as all or nothing, right? Like, so if Dahmer is going to kill, what was it, 17 people?
Yes, 17 men and boys.
17 men and boys, eat some of them, store their body parts, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean that he's not capable of loving his dad. I know that sounds weird, almost like a juxtaposition. Right?
When we're talking in this area, we say a lot of things that are kind of, you know, are the things that you wouldn't normally say in a conversation, right?
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't mean that he can't love his father. But it's just odd that all of that is contained in the same person, right? It's just, it's very.
Well, I know how that feels like. I don't know how that feels like, but I know how it feels to not be a murderer, but, you know, fantasize about my stepmother possibly getting murdered. You know, like I know what it's like to deal with the yin and yang of the mind, just not to that degree, right? Like that is, but yeah, I mean, we're talking about a perfect storm, a perfect psychological storm of how you're brought up, what your disposition is biologically, what your disposition is psychologically, how the different ingredients of mom and dad and how you're treated at school and how you're treated by society just creates something. And most of the time it's benign. And this time it wasn't.
Well, remember that this is a kid who is, you know, in his early teens, knows he's gay, can't come out to father because dad is a super duper Christian guy. And he is just tortured. He's got these feelings about death or about possessing someone. He's drinking to excess, so he's, you know, going to high school drunk. I mean, where in this scenario does someone say, "Hey, the Dahmer kid seems a little off"? But then what happens after that? And I don't know.
I just full disclosure, I dropped acid on my first day of high school. So I could have easily been, you know, told that I was some sort of weird guy too. And they would have been right. But I never took it to the point that.
That's all right. I went to Divine Savior Holy Angels, James.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry. Jesus.
All girls Catholic high school. There it is. I mean, they still don't really like. They have me back for career day, but they're always really nervous. They're like, "Are you going to talk about the book?" And I thought, well, no. Am I going to talk about crocheting? I think not.
So your dad, though, wasn't happy that you ended up pivoting from a crime reporter to a serial killer expert?
Well, no, of course not. He thought I was writing about something really awful. This is an awful case. He knew that I had written the book. He died shortly after the book came out. He lived long enough to see you know, his baby girl write a book. But yeah, he just thought it was. He's like, I don't understand why you write about that. And I said, well, I apologize for the fact that it's not Proust. I do. But you know, it's I was a journalist, and it was the story that found me. I mean, you know, it was the story that found me. It wasn't I was so interested in serial murder. And you know, it's very funny, James, to this day, people still, when they see another serial murder case somewhere, they'll say, "Ooh, are you going to go and, you know, write a book about that case?" And I always say, no. You know, this was something.
It's a one-off for you.
Yeah. I mean, this was a case that I was involved in from the moment that it was discovered. And while I find other serial killer cases interesting, because as part of my research, I've learned a lot about serial killers. I've contributed to a number of you know, academic volumes on serial killers, whatever information I had from Dahmer. But no, I mean, I'd rather watch The Real Housewives than, you know.
I would. We have a question from Leanne Schaefer. Did he really drink blood? I didn't know he was Catholic.
You know,
Sorry.
See, and then Schwartz was struck down by the Lord shortly after she did James.
If it makes you feel any better, Anne, there's no Lord. So
you know what? I know about the cannibalism. I do not. You know what? I really have to refresh my. Isn't that crazy? I'd have to refresh my notes on that and read back my notes. He did consume parts of some of his victims, and the reason that he did that is he was trying to look for a way to keep them with him. I believe that he did at some point certainly taste blood because he wanted to know what that was like. So there was a curiosity there, but also how does he keep these people with him? So he is with one of his, it's a podcast, so I'm not sure how really nasty I'm supposed to go here, but
you can be as Two Live Crew once said, be as nasty as you want to be.
That's beautiful. I can't wait till you send me that on a sampler for the kitchen.
I will. I think I have a person, in fact, in the chat who can make you like a crochet doily thing that you can hang on your wall that says that. So we're good.
With all the other troubling things people have sent me to put on my wall over the years. But no, I mean, so there was one victim that Dahmer was very attracted to because he really worked out a lot. He had very attractive biceps, very well-developed arms. And when Dahmer killed him, he said, I loved his biceps so much that I wanted to see what they would be like. And so that was what drove him. I mean, I remember somebody had said to me, they said, well, Dahmer was a cannibal, right? And I said, well, he didn't eat everybody. And I thought, oh God, Annie, shut up. That was the most terrible answer ever. Because he didn't. But he was searching for a way to make people a part of him that wouldn't leave, and cannibalism was a manifestation of that.
That almost sounds too poetic to be true. Like it almost sounds. It sounds like a cover story for. I'm a really evil, gross person. But do you think it's truthful?
I don't have. Here's another thing that I'm sure is going to sound just a little bit nuts. I don't doubt things that Jeffrey Dahmer said in his confession and in his conversations with the shrinks, because for heaven's sakes, he had nothing to gain or lose by it. He's already in. And I do think that he was interested in being studied, but he was such a manipulator that there's no telling what kinds of things he said to people to see what kind of a rise he could get out of them. So,
and if Tony Soprano taught us anything, it's that sociopaths will utilize talk therapy as a way to make themselves the object of pity or the object of interest rather than the object of scorn. Mm-hmm. That's what I learned from The Sopranos. Also a serial killer. I've often wondered, I understand the difference, I think, but what would you call, maybe you don't know the answer to this, but I just thought of it, so I'm going to ask you. A person that kills, a serial killer is often described as a person who kills 3 or more people, and there's usually some sort of like trophies that they keep and all this kind of stuff. What would you call like a mafia hitman? Like what like, a guy that's got like dozens and dozens and dozens of kills under his belt, and they never get plopped into the serial killer pile. I'm just wondering why you think that is. I guess that's a mass murder.
A mass murder? I don't know.
Or just Vinny doing his job, right?
Perhaps. Never have I had to talk about The Sopranos during an interview about them. My husband's going to be so mad he missed this. He's going to have
to. Is he there? He can join you on the couch. That's big enough. Are you excited
to do with this life? Imagine bringing me home to
married. That means you married your dad in a way, right?
True.
They're on the same page. Oh God, I just had the worst idea that my daughter would marry someone like me. Jesus. I hope she's not, whoever she marries, I hope the woman is not like me. I'm just going to leave it at that because I want my daughter to be gay. I don't know why I'm telling you this. No. Okay. The documentary that comes out tonight, you've seen it. I'm assuming you were able to screen it before it came out.
No, Joe didn't let any of us see it.
Really?
I saw it this morning. The minute I got up, I went on Netflix so I could watch it because I wanted to see, if I.
And what did you think? What did you think? Let's hear it.
I was really impressed by it. The way that he folded the storytelling of all of us who were involved in the case, along with, he weaved that in with Dahmer's own words talking about what he had done, I thought it was masterful. I really did. I thought it was masterful because it told the story in a way that I mean, listen, this is not a fun story to tell to begin with, right? This is not, suitable for the whole family, right? But the way that he told it's I like the way that he kind of makes us each a character in the story. Wendy was the attorney. She's just out of law school. It's her first job. And she ends up, having to go to the safety building to talk to the serial killer. I'm a young reporter. I'm covering the weekend cops beat. I end up at this apartment building covering what was going to be the biggest story of my career that would go global. You have district attorneys and cops and detectives and, medical examiners and all kinds of people who come at this story from their specific direction. And I think people will find that interesting. Jerry Boyle was almost like a father figure to him, his attorney. And Jerry is interviewed in this series. And, it's weird because the longer you talk to Jerry about it, and he's, Jeff was like this and that, and you keep forgetting he's talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, serial killer. Yeah. Because if anybody, Jerry Boyle probably spent the most amount of time with Dahmer and got to know him as he prepared his insanity defense.
Yeah, that was it. That was also something I found interesting in the movie, in the series, was he didn't feel like he was insane. And it made me think to myself about, it actually made me ponder the idea of what evil is, right? And if evil is something that people who are evil, like Jeffrey Dahmer, if evil is insanity or if it isn't insanity. And it's difficult to traverse those waters. It seems like a very subjective idea. I just want to know what your thoughts are.
Hard for the jury to figure out. I mean, the jury was, your first inclination when you hear about the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer is to say, that guy's crazy, right? Of course he's insane. But then when you start to understand the different requirements for being considered legally insane, and then you think about all the ways he went to avoid detection, all the things he did so that nobody would know what he had done.
Can you give me an example of those? Because in the movie, they made it seem like he was really sloppy. Everyone could smell the bodies.
To the end. I mean, so the thing is that toward the end, he really accelerated his killing. And there's a theory that they kind of want to get caught toward the end because they can't take living this way anymore. But no, Dahmer was not sloppy initially. Initially, he would bring his victims back to wherever he was living. He would drug them. He would kill them. He would dismember them, and then he would keep whatever trophies, and then he would dispose of the rest of them. The problem with the last 5 victims, I believe, is that he was just killing so quickly that the bodies were quite literally piling up.
In that, was that a depiction correct? Like he would just toss them in the garbage behind the building?
No, not that I'm aware of. No, it's not. Okay. It's not accurate. He was, he did put some of the remains in garbage bags and got rid of them that way. But again, you're watching a very dramatic depiction of this. Mm-hmm. I suppose it's metaphorical. Does it really matter if somebody's in a hefty bag or you just tossed them in the garbage? I mean, of course not. But,
well, it says something about our sanitation services, right? Like they smell so many bad things that they can't decipher what they're smelling. Maybe it just seems lazy almost.
Here's the thing. Dahmer moved into a neighborhood where he kind of just blended in. It was people who minded their own business. Nobody really bothered you. Few people in the building knew him as that weird white guy, but he purposely chose a place where if you're in a building that smells bad, it's not weird. A very challenged part of the city, low income part of the city. Sometimes people are using the elevator and the toilet and the stairwell interchangeably. I mean, it's not, it's when I say we can't judge 91 by 2022, The same goes for, we can't judge, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to a 14-year-old. I mean, I think about my 14-year-old. It's like, well, you can't do that because this is
not the
we're
same.
talking about different, we're talking apples and oranges here.
When you were a young reporter, because I've been a freelance journalist for a long time. I don't know what I am anymore because I enjoy being a podcast guy and I write articles still, but I don't know if I consider myself a journalist anymore because I have such a respect for the craft that I know that if you are a journalist, then you're doing a lot of things that I'm not doing right now. So I would say I used to be a journalist. And I can imagine how competitive it must have been at that time for a lot of different stories, but I'm not sure that would be the case for this particular one. And I just wanted to know what it was like. How old were you? And were you a crime beat reporter or?
Oh yeah.
Give me the lay of the land here.
I had the most unenviable job in the newsroom. I was the weekend cops reporter. So
I thought I was going to say editor.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 p.m. to midnight. I went to crime scenes. I did ride-alongs. I did all that stuff. I loved it. And I still believe that it's the best beat in the newsroom. And I also believe that like every reporter ought to have to cover, cops for a month, or cover City Hall for a month, or at least, figure that stuff out, because those are the stories where that involve real people and real human emotion. But everybody wanted that story. Are you kidding? Everybody wanted a piece of that story. It was the big story. But there wasn't going to be a lot of exclusive information. Everybody was pretty much going to get the same thing. The big part of it was really being the first to report it, and then also being the first to report that Jeffrey Dahmer had contact with the police just before he had killed one of his victims.
What is the difference between Jeffrey Dahmer in 1978 when he was at his grandma's versus Jeffrey Dahmer of 1991? What is the main, take me through the evolution of that serial killer, if you could.
Well, Jeffrey Dahmer in 1978 has just graduated from high school. He's living in Bath, Ohio, and he is having lots and lots of fantasies about getting a jogger, finding somebody that he could take back home with him. He wants to possess someone. That was his big fantasy. So he was trying to figure out a way that he could maybe make that happen. So that's who he is in 1978. He's confused. He's frightened. He becomes, over the years, much more calculated. So he doesn't kill again until he gets to Milwaukee, when he lives with his grandma, after Dad, decides he can't live in the house in Bath, Ohio anymore. So he starts to bring people home when he's living with his grandma, who, look, I mean, she doesn't know exactly what's happening there. There are some people that don't believe that they ever told her what actually happened. But she knew that Jeffrey was seeing men and bringing them home, and she did not approve of that.
Mm-hmm. Catholic
so
again.
That's who he is. What happens is, as time is now going on, he is becoming more and more excited at the idea that he seems to be accomplishing the thing that he wanted, which was to possess someone, to have someone that would stay with you always, that would not ask anything of you, that would not, be any trouble to you. So that was always what he was pursuing. Toward the end, he was drilling very small holes in the skulls of his victims while they were alive, and pouring muriatic acid inside to see if he could turn them into mummies. He had one victim that walked around 2 days like that before he died.
Did he ever comment on in any of these conversations, did he ever comment on whether or not he cared or whether or not he got off on the pain that he inflicted?
I don't know that. I think that he took, man, it sounds weird talking this way. He took great pains to make sure that people did not feel pain. That's why he drugged them.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted them knocked out completely before he did anything. And that is, that's how he gets caught at the very, very end. Tracy Edwards, who was going to be his last victim, comes back to the apartment with him. Dahmer gives him a drink that's laced with some of the sedative. He didn't have enough of the sedative in there. He's getting sloppy. That's how Dahmer gets caught, is when he starts to just kind of be out of control, as opposed to the controlled way that he was conducting these murders. That's the difference. That's the evolution.
We have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to ask you a question. I'm not sure if you've been asked this question before. I talked to somebody else on this podcast, I don't know, about a month ago or so, and we were talking about prisons. And I am of the mind that the prison warden, and I guess to a larger extent the state, or if it's a federal prison, the nation, like they have a responsibility to make sure people don't get raped in prison, make sure people don't get killed in prison. I don't really understand the fanfare of cheering a murder, even if it's of a murderer. And I remember when Dahmer was killed, I remember that story coming out. And the first thought that came to my mind was, like, did they allow this to happen on purpose? Like, how is it possible that like, why are people getting killed in prisons? I guess is my question. Like, I mean, it's a really big question. I understand that there's probably not enough time to really delve into it, but I think that, if you can't protect the people that you're imprisoning, then what are you doing? Because so I guess my question is about Dahmer's death in prison, and if there was any clues that would indicate that the prison kind of like turned away and kind of knew that he was going to be in danger. I guess.
Well, I think there was every indication that they turned away. I mean, I don't know that it was a great plot and conspiracy, because I'm not a huge fan of those to begin with. I haven't seen, I always love when people come up with these police conspiracies, and I want to say, listen, 4 cops can't figure out where to go to lunch. So I'm never thinking that there's going to be a great conspiracy.
That's not a ringing endorsement either, Annie.
I understand. Understood. But you have the 2 most high-risk prisoners in Columbia Correctional Institution cleaning a bathroom. Christopher Scarver, who is crazy, is also walking around. You've got all of these bays in the in the guard station, and somehow this is allowed to happen. And no one was ever charged. There was the full-on investigation. I interviewed people that were working at the prison. There was a glaring question: how could this happen? But we never answered it. Only one guard was ever disciplined, and that was one who, right after they figured out that Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't coming back, he ran to Jeffrey's cell and got his shaving kit and his toothbrush and put it on eBay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that happens.
We're
adding that to the list of stuff that I can't believe that happens. But there was no proof. Christopher Scarver, says the devil made me do it, or whatever. I mean, he lives out in the Supermax now and writes poetry and has a blog, and
good for him. I guess I don't know.
Can't make that stuff up.
No, you can't.
But yeah, so there was no one ever held accountable. But honestly, James, I don't think anybody cared. I mean, there was not this great hue and cry for, we must find out how Dahmer was killed.
Yeah, and I get that. I get that, but I mean, I don't know. I think I like to think that there's certain principles I think that a society should embrace, and one of them is that if you are deemed guilty of crimes, you should go to prison. I'm still, maybe I'm too idealistic, because I still think that prisons, maybe not for lifers or death row people, but like it still is technically supposed to be a place where you are rehabilitated or something. You can't rehabilitate Dahmer, but why don't you just stick him in, not necessarily, like, I guess it's torture to stick someone in isolation for the rest of their lives.
Well, he was in isolation, James. So he was in isolation for, I think, maybe the first year or so that he was there.
Mhm.
He knew, he had told Jerry Boyle, his attorney, he said, the minute they let me mix with the general population, you know I'm going to be dead. He knew it.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
knew
yeah.
it. And so that was, they had him in isolation as long as they could. And then eventually he's another prisoner.
Yeah. That's it. It seems like negligence or something, you know? I don't know. It seems like negligence to me. But that's just me. I know nothing about this stuff. Moving forward, what is your job right now? It's got like 18 words, so I couldn't I couldn't remember it. But
That's all
it's
right.
yeah.
I actually own my own consulting firm, and
Uh-huh.
what I do is I work with odd enough, I work with law enforcement,
Uh-huh.
and I work with prosecutors, and I teach them how to build public information operations inside their agencies. So when there is a high profile incident that happens in a community, I may end up working with that agency to help them put that message out. Here's what we should say. Here's how we should say it. Here's how we follow up on it. So I'm a communication strategist, I guess there's a 2-word job title for it.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting pivot from being a journalist. I mean, you're already halfway
Not really.
there as part.
Still tell stories. I'm just helping somebody else tell a story.
Yeah.
I work, post George Floyd, law enforcement doesn't have the luxury anymore of saying, here's what happened, trust us, because we're not believed anymore. And so what I think is, or for the most part, or for a large part, maybe we're not believed right away. But I think that when we look at, when we look at the fact that, you have to get out and tell people what happened when you have a police shooting, or when you have a mass casualty incident, or when, look at what happens, out in Las Vegas. That's the most recent story that I can think of. And that's, crazy town as well. But here's what I always watch when I watch those stories. How soon do they get the story out there? How soon did they tell the public what was happening? And how soon did they say, okay, you know what, it's one person that's responsible? And because eventually the blame game is coming, and it's almost like 5, 4, 3, 2 when these things happen. So that really is, it's not a pivot. I was always a storyteller, and now I'm just trying to help law enforcement tell stories about what they're doing to educate people so that they don't get mad when people don't understand what they do.
Would it be easier if every cop was mandated to have a body cam that never turned off when they were on duty?
Body camera is not a panacea. It really isn't. A body camera is not a panacea because, to me, you can have video. I've seen video of instances. I've seen video that had to be explained because what you see is not what you think you are seeing. You have to have it explained to you. And so, no, I don't think that the body camera piece is big. I think that de-escalation training is important. I think that police officers really need to learn how to talk to people. And that's a very basic kind of a Band-Aid, but that's kind of the place that I come from.
So it's not a panacea, but I mean, is there a crucial negative of body cams that I'm not that I'm not looking at?
No. So let's think about what it means to have a body camera. So you're a police. Let's think about the community you live in. Let's say you live in a community.
I live in a forest, Annie.
You live in a forest. So you have 7 elves, and then the chief elf that is, taking care of.
I'm the chief elf. You're looking at him. Yeah.
That is taking care of your family. But what happens is if you're going to record all of that, you have to store it. You have to keep it somewhere. You have to have some method of cataloging it. You have to be able to respond to open records requests for it. And so you have to be able to go back through it and figure out where is whatever piece somebody's asking for. So it's not just the videotaping itself. It's all the other stuff that comes on the back end, like the storage and the retention and how much is the city really going to pay for all of that data storage? Data storage is really expensive when it comes to cities and their budgets. And I know nobody wants to hear that because it's so incredibly boring. when you tuned in to hear about Jeffrey Dahmer. But you know,
Hey, we're about to wrap here. Let's wrap on a good note, Annie. No. Well, listen, I think this is fascinating. I feel like I could talk. I would love to, like, maybe one day do it like a really serious chronological deep dive on your work in this case. Would you be willing to do that?
Of course, absolutely. I'm really impressed with all the chats. I mean, I didn't want to take too much time to look over there, but I mean, you've got a really active audience there.
Yeah, and they make fun of each other for fangirling so hard because of how much they love you.
I did see somebody say, you know, what in the world is wrong with you? You bought Dahmer's toiletries. See, this is the problem with not really listening to the.
No, they talked to each other. So someone joked, okay. Yeah, someone joked about how they were outbid by somebody else.
I officially sound like somebody's mom for saying that, man.
No, you don't listen. You're probably someone's mom, and they're lucky to have you. No, you're not. Okay. But listen, the book is called Monster, the true story of the Jeffrey Dahmer murders. And the documentary that features your work and yourself, I believe, as Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, premieres today on Netflix. I don't know if that premieres today on Netflix in the States versus Canada, because for some reason they do different scheduling, but most of my audience is in Canada. So we'll have to either wait for it to come out, or maybe it's out already. Maybe someone in the chats can enlighten me whether or not it's come out today on Netflix. But listen, it was a really, really interesting conversation. I'm so happy that I contacted you to have you on. I really appreciate your time. And thank you very much for joining us.
I appreciate it. And thanks for having a way for people who are interested in this to be able to have a forum to hear more about it. Because if they just
absolutely
read the news or listen and wait for a podcast, they're not going to get the whole story. So
they're not, but I appreciate you coming. I had a really good time speaking with you. So hopefully we can do it again.
I'll come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Annie Schwartz. She is the author once again of Monster, the true story of the Jeffrey Dahmer murders. And she is featured in the documentary on Netflix, Conversations with a Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes. I have a surprise guest here that I wanted to bring on because I thought it was fitting. You know, because we just looked at it from the side of journalism, of what it's like to deal with a serial killer case, what it's like to report on a serial killer case. I am envious as hell that of Annie. You know, what I would have, it would have been a dream to be able to work on a story like this especially when I was in my 20s. But what does it look like on the law side? So here to help us with that is Rob Kavikalian. Rob, I'm saying your name wrong again, and I don't know why.
Yeah, Kivlikin.
Rob Kivlikin. I wanted to talk to you today. People know who you are. You.
I was in my office. I don't have my microphone.
Yeah, and it's already annoying me. Yeah, I can't hear you, buddy. You're breaking
Seriously?
up. Do you have earbuds?
I do, but they're not charged.
Like you just said shit, but I didn't hear it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What device is this?
It's a Mac.
Are you in the Safari browser?
I am.
Get out of it. It's Safari's the problem.
Good.
So come back in when you're done. Trust me. So Rob, hopefully his tech issues can work. But yeah, no, Rob is on the show because he has actually represented a serial killer, and I'll let him sort of expand on that a little bit because I don't know how much he's allowed to talk about it. So I thought it would be interesting to have him on to sort of get that perspective, which is interesting because, you know, on the reporter end, you have to be unbiased. You just got to report the facts. You just got to you can't use too much of any editorial flair when describing the suspect, all that kind of stuff. And when you're a lawyer, you have to, and you're a defense attorney, you have to defend sometimes really awful people. And I find both of those interesting in how they overlap and sort of challenge us meaning if you're a lawyer or a reporter, to maintain sort of objectivity or to maintain a level of professionalism and to not allow yourself and your emotions to sort of get the better of you. I'm going to see if Rob can work now. Hey, Rob.
Hey, buddy.
That is perfect. Yeah, Safari. I don't know what it is about Safari, but it
was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So it's Friday night, and I've done a work week as a criminal defense lawyer. So I'm gonna rap here.
Are you gonna actually rap? Because
no, not like I'm not gonna like spit hot rhymes. No.
Leave that shit to me. As a lawyer, yeah, as a lawyer, I want to know what kind of like, do you have to sort of prep? You're smoking. You're now the Ryan Lindley of the Blackballed podcast.
We're like on like, we're not on mainstream here. Like I can hack darts.
I get it. I'm just playing with you. Give me an idea of what it's like to represent.
I'll cover it. Like
give me an idea of what it's like to represent someone who is a serial killer, who's so heinous and who's a sociopath and a psychopath and all of those things.
I'm Rob Kavikalian. I'm a criminal defense lawyer by trade. And so I was, when I was a very much junior with a top criminal defense firm in Toronto, I was on the defense team of Bruce McArthur, who is one of the most prolific serial killers in Canadian history. And my job on the file was to review disclosure. And so basically to review the police and the Crown's evidence. And, to be a part of that, first of all, at such a young age as a defense lawyer, also as like a young age as a person, it was profound in its own way, right? Like, and when you meet somebody and who is so clearly guilty, I think like Mr. McArthur pled out. And here's the fucked up thing. I had a good relationship with the guy. My job was to go into
I want
jail.
to delve into that.
Like,
that is what I'm interested in. Like you're sitting at a table with somebody who what they did. How do you go about being a professional and establishing a rapport that doesn't make you feel almost dirty?
Well, on the one hand, like you're a barrister and a solicitor in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario. So like you have those obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And so that overrides everything, right? Like you must go in there. It's like the sort of bedside manner that doctors talk about. You got to go in there. My lighting is fucking terrible.
Just turn off the light in the kitchen.
Yeah, seriously. Give me a hot minute.
Yeah, you get a hot minute. As you can see, the technical difficulties only happen when someone who's normally on the show is on the show. Okay, that's better, Rob. That's better.
It's like crushing. My forehead still looks very shiny, but fuck it.
Yeah, and it's an 8 head. So
a 5 head. Don't be fucking cute.
Where's your beard?
I got rid of it, and so you can see my 5 chin.
What was that Easy E line that'll probably get me banned from YouTube? She had more chins.
Like Marlon Brando when he was not hot.
You have more chins than a Chinese phone book. Anyways,
yeah, no, like Marlon Brando, like in The Score, you know him, like when it's like Marlon likes barbecue. That's what I look like. Anyway, so thank you, DaCosta. His lighting is fine. You're a sweetheart.
No, it isn't. DaCosta doesn't know what the fuck he's talking. He's good at art, but not at lighting. Sorry, DaCosta.
1 minute.
Excuse me.
Oh shit.
What are you doing? The sounds do not make me very confident in what the fuck it is that you're doing. Stop saying "oh."
Fuck off. Oh no, that's not working.
What are you doing? You were fine. Go back to no. The way it was before you got up. And all the people listening right now that are listening on Spotify, I'm apologizing. Now take off the kitchen one. Rob, there you go. Now sit the fuck down and talk about the serial killer, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Right? Sorry. Anyway, so like at first instance, you're like, I'm going in, like, and I'm a junior lawyer at the time. So I'm like, I'm just trying to hold it together. Like,
yeah,
I know what this person's done.
Can you go over some of that so we can because there might be some people that aren't familiar with Bruce McArthur and his crimes. I don't know what you're allowed to tell me, but I want to know everything that you're allowed to tell me, like of his crimes. Maybe you can stick to the shit that was reported. I don't know. It's up to you.
No, it's the whole stuff that like he staged the bodies, like he there were classic serial killer aspects to the case, such as trophies. Certain serial killers, I think the FBI, who are defunct, put out a list of things that serial killers do, and one of the 5 types of serial killers are people who collect trophies. One of my favorite serial killers, which is super fucked up, the fact that I have a favorite serial killer, was a hitman for the Bonanno crime family, who was well known to have collected trophies from his victims.
Do you have to collect trophies to be a serial killer? Because I just spoke about that with Annie about how, and I used the Can you stop interrupting me, Rob, please?
Okay.
Okay. And how? But I used the example of a mafia hitman. And I'm like, why aren't they considered serial killers? And we talked about trophies and stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
The guy that I'm talking about is a guy named Tony Karate. I don't know his formal last name, but he was an expert in martial arts, and he was a hitman for the Bonanno crime family. One of the 5 families in New York. And have you ever seen the movie Donnie Brasco? That involved a crew of the Bonanno crime family in New York.
Listen, my last name's DiFiore, and I just want to let my viewers know that there's no such thing as the mafia. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely not. There's Cosa Nostra is not real. It's a
Cosa what?
Yeah, it's a figment of the FBI's imagination.
Rico, that's just a guy,
They did not have proof that J. Edgar Hoover was gay. So anyway,
don't be transphobic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, and so but there was a classic trophy collecting aspect to that case, and in particular with certain, and this came out in court, images that he kept
right
on his fucking hard drive, and I'm sitting there going like the.
Are you talking about the mafia guy right now or Bruce?
Bruce, and okay. The defense of rough sex gone wrong went out the window quickly.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that classic aspect of collecting trophies, and this, in my estimation or my analysis, would be through the pictures and certain other articles that I'm not going to go into detail about because that did not come out in court. But and you're sitting there with this guy, and it's you throw on your shirt and tie and jacket in the parking lot, and you have a butt and you cologne, and you go in there. And I think part of it was that maybe I shouldn't say this, but I was just his speed. I looked like every guy he killed.
Oh wow.
I look like every guy he killed.
Wow. So did you use that as a way to maintain a good rapport in a sense?
I'm not going to comment there. That's
what?
I'll leave that to you.
Oh, you flirted a bit. Okay, I got it. It's fine. It's okay, Rob. It's a safe space here. As we talk about serial killers that kept body parts in potted plants, right?
And I'm a sworn officer of the court. It's cool.
No. But what I was really trying to say is that when you're a lawyer in that position, establishing a rapport with your client is probably hugely important because you want them to trust you.
Yes, and it was very much going toward a plea. It was very much going toward that. One of the things with a serial killer is many of them want to see their handiwork on a wall. They want to see what they've done.
Yeah.
Because it's in Canada, you're charged with murder 1. So your sentence, and people get this wrong all the time. In Canada, if you're convicted of murder, you're sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. So, okay, let's break that down. You're sentenced to life in prison. First part, you're there for life. Second part, you get the possibility of parole at 25 years.
Right. Okay. So that's why they have the Bernardo every 5 years or something. Bernardo will
sees the light of day again.
Right.
It's not my old boss, Ted Royal. like knows the guy out. And he's actually got a really. I've told you this story before, James.
Mhm.
He's got a really interesting practice. He's out in Kingston, so he does a bit of cute sort of criminal defense work, like on the initial level. But then he does a lot of the appellate and parole board work in the area. And Kingston is sort of penitentiary center of Canada, right?
Right.
Because there's still Bath, there's still Collins Bay. Like it's, was he scary? No.
Yeah, sorry, that's a question from. Sorry, I always have to keep in mind that there's people that are listening and not watching. But the question from one of our viewers is, was he scary? Was Bruce McArthur scary?
Like you go into the interview room and you're like locked in, and in Toronto South Detention Center, where I saw him, it's an oblong table and it's like brushed metal, so it's about the table itself is abnormally long. So it's about 4 feet long. Like
a Chippendale table? You know what that is?
Well, I mean, like my days of dancing at Chippendales are over. Same with yours.
Yeah, you don't even have a suitable mustache anymore. You know?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Every Chippendales dancer looked like Tom Selleck when I was a kid. You ever, the gag cards that people would get, like, to give to their like sisters and stuff, or moms, whatever. Yeah, it was always like a Tom Selleck look like with a perm.
Yeah.
What the fuck was with perms in the 80s with men? Anyways, we're totally off track here.
Hey, perms in the 80s need to be discussed on this podcast. Okay.
Welcome to Blackballed. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer, Bruce McArthur, and perms. Where did we go wrong? Yeah.
It might lead to the epidemic of serial killers.
That'd be good.
Now it's sociology. Anyway, so like you're sitting at the table and it's an abnormally long table between two people. You're sitting there like, it's not a dinner table. It's about fucking 2 feet longer.
Okay.
And it's like brushed metal, the type that you can slide across quickly.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it's bolted, and it's the width of the walls. So it's this long rectangular room, and the chair's bolted down.
Is he attached to it with cuffs and everything?
No cuffs.
No?
I always insist no cuffs, because I want them to feel like they're not,
You're establishing trust, right?
Whoever I'm meeting with, I want them to feel like, and that went south on me once. I had a guy attack me in cells. He leaped across the table.
Oh, wow.
Didn't go well for him. Did not. Won't talk about that part. But it's concrete. It's concrete, and then there's a rectangular door behind you, and there's that kind of, if you went to a shit high school, there's that type of mesh window in the door that you can't put your fist through.
Right.
And so on both sides,
it's like razor wire almost. Yeah.
Pretty much. Like you try to put your fist through that, you're going to break your hand.
Yeah.
And so like he came in and like, so I always say no cuffs, like just.
I'm going to cut you off there and break my own rule for a second, because I want to preamble this. This man was convicted of killing how many people?
He had not been convicted.
Sorry. But eventually he was convicted of killing how many people?
I believe 8.
8. Okay. So I just wanted to set the scene of what you're going into. You're walking into a room with a serial killer who we eventually learned killed at least 8 people.
Was a serial killer at the time.
Right. Okay. So that is the preamble I'm looking for, because it establishes your sort of state of mind and what you're thinking when you're walking in.
My job on the file was to review the evidence.
Yeah.
But this is one of the most high profile cases in Canadian history. This is, big stuff. And so I was told, don't fuck it up. Like, you're going to meet with the guy, don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
And, I went in there and like it was, we had a very frank discussion.
And where was this, was he always going to plead? Like you have a mission, right? Like when you go into a courtroom, when you go into a meeting like that, do you have a goal of trying to get a plea?
I had a goal in the meeting in which I cannot discuss.
Okay.
Given the weight of the evidence, because this was not a whodunit.
Yeah.
Like I've had murder clients in the past where it's like a whodunit, and there's a defense to be had, and I want to hear your story, and let's get your narrative as to what happened that evening, and we'll take that and we'll compare that with the police evidence and the Crown evidence, and we'll see what we can do. But given the particular circumstances of that case, I can say it was moving toward a plea.
Okay.
And that was over my head at the time. I did not have that conversation. I was just a junior. I'd just been called to the bar. Like I was just on the file to review and catalog the disclosure.
Now, I'm trying to guess, like, if you were to climb into his, are you allowed to talk about stuff like what you thought his mind was like, what you thought, his motivations were? Like, we were talking to that reporter, we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer.
He is your standard. Like, I look at fucking, who's the guy from Facebook? Like the guy Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Like, if I went to a police sketch artist and said, "Draw me a fucking serial killer," like that's what it would come out like. Like,
so funny.
Like,
yeah.
Am I wrong? Like,
well, he's more of a school shooter, I would say.
The dead eyes, like that.
Yeah,
like, that one takes it for me.
Yeah, like the Sandy Hook shooter was that really gaunt-looking weirdo.
Yeah, you're like, holy shit, that guy's about to kill people. Like, if you're like the mailman and you see that kid, I'm calling the cops.
Right. Imagine that was your Dickie D guy. Jesus. And for those who don't remember what Dickie D is, it's the little bike that you could sell ice creams out of that everyone who ever had that job sold weed out of. If you were one of those people, you were recently convicted, please contact Kivlaw.
Yeah. Like, or Kivlaw. Yeah. Joe Biden will fucking pardon you if it's federal. If you remember.
So I want to get okay, because we have to wrap soon because I think there's a show coming on, but I want to really get into like the darkness of the psychology of the person that you're sitting in front of as much as you can share, so that this doesn't go from a podcast of really interesting serial killers to James and Rob shooting the shit while Rob smokes.
Lick my fucking bag. No, but this is just like being up at Leanne's cottage. I see her keep commenting. No, but like the point is like I sat down there and I was like I'd seen the evidence. There was no I didn't do this, like none of that going on. And I was still in a position at that time. I was an adult male. I was in my late 20s. Like, you're not going to play that game with me.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a very frank discussion, which I cannot. I kind of love Friday Night Rob, Jen Waddell. I'm sorry, I'm watching the chat while we speak.
Yeah, it's really doing a lot for the continuity of the podcast content.
Yeah.
So please,
go thanks,
ahead.
Bob.
Yeah.
No, but like there was none of that with me. Like I went in there, I had a mission, I had questions to ask. I had certain questions to ask. I had a task assigned to me as a junior lawyer. Okay, I wasn't there to get his guts. Like, I wasn't there to talk about the meat of it.
Right. Was there any, if you looked at the evidence and you had to look at all of it, did that lead, like, do you have a way of stopping any subsequent trauma that you may experience from recalling all of these details?
I don't know. Fucking, I see my shrink once every 2 weeks. There's that part of it.
But seriously, did it linger at all for you?
For sure it did.
Yeah.
Like, and the work generally does. Like, I've had to review child pornography. That's the worst stuff. Well, that was worse than McArthur.
Yeah.
Like I've had to look at images of children in a sexualized position, and I know you're like, and that's an appropriate reaction, James.
Yeah.
Like that is
No, dude, I tried to write a story. I was gonna write, and I might go back to it because I think now that I'm sober, I think I might be able to handle it better. But there was, I wanted to do a story about all of the slap on the wrist sentences for child rapists and things like that. And when I was reviewing just cases and I would read the details of the crime, and then I would read a judge's
I won't rep.
and then I would read the judge's reasoning
Yeah.
for giving them a light sentence, and I couldn't figure out how the two even matched.
This is Canada, and we have sentencing principles and sentencing guidelines, and those must be applied equally and fairly to everybody. So I get it. If a judge, you might not get it.
Well, I don't think that a country has a good justice system when a person who's convicted of the unwanted sexual touching of a minor gets 3 years in jail, and someone who committed tax fraud gets 8. That is not,
No, but we like big picture, James, and we can delve into this further on another podcast. But we have a fantastic justice system in this country, comparatively. Like I have a cousin who's a public defender in Oakland.
Yeah.
And they do mass arraignments down there, meaning like an arraignment at a trial is James DeFiore on October 7th, on or about the day of October 7th, you did such and such. How do you plead? They will do that to 300 people at the same time.
Yeah, obviously that's shitty. But specifically, I know mandatory minimums are a big thing amongst lawyers. They don't like them. I get that because it takes away the nuance of certain crimes, right? It takes away the idea that like not all crimes are alike. But nonetheless, I think that a system might need repairing if a child rapist gets 3 or 5 years or whatever it is, and a person who commits tax fraud gets 8. I just think that fundamentally something's broken there. That's all. I don't think that our entire justice system sucks because of it, but in that particular thing,
there is something that is broken in our justice system for sure. But I would not talk about sentencing first.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
You're for somebody that's on the front line. Like I would not talk about sentencing first as to what's broken in our justice system.
Okay. Fair enough.
And
would you talk about a third? Because I think that a lot of people who aren't experts, just to be fair to people who feel like me, I understand that there's a lot of people that just seem to have a vigilante idea of what sentencing should be. There's a lot of people that think that if a person gets raped in prison, oh well, so what? I'm not that guy, right? But I do. When I was gonna work on that story, I had to stop because I just got so fucking angry at what I was reading and then the sentences that they got that I was just like, I can't understand this, right? Like this is beyond me. I don't understand why if someone rapes a child that they don't just fucking get life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. I don't understand that,
And part of me, James, does not understand that either.
Mm-hmm.
But intellectually, I've delved into sentencing principles in this country, and I understand where the sentences come from. Okay?
Yeah.
Like it's not a lot of like I'll be standing next to a guy in court and be going like, are we fucking serious right here? Like, is this happening? Like a court of law says you did this, and this is what you're getting. Like that's happened. And I've said this before on the podcast with Blundell. Like, I've got a guy off on charges and walked him out of the courtroom and gone, like, we both fucking know what happened here, pal. Like,
really,
you're lucky to be seeing the light of day right now.
Yeah, that's the tough part about being a lawyer, I guess. Like it's the higher principle, it would be an adherence. Pardon?
Right. Defense lawyer.
Right. But the higher principle of everyone deserves a defense. I could see that. I could see a defense lawyer wearing that as a cloak to protect them from what they must feel sometimes, which would be the guilt of knowing that the person that they just got off was probably guilty of something. That must be really difficult to do.
That's been like dozens of times.
Yeah.
The point is one, it's not my call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the arbiter of anyone's guilt or innocence. I am not. There is a judge and or jury of their peers that will make that call. That's not my call to make. My job in that moment is to defend them. Okay?
Yeah.
And every defense available, and the Law Society says this, regardless of my otherwise delicate fucking sensibilities. Like,
yeah. It's funny. I didn't put this together until just this moment, but that both Jeffrey Dahmer and Bruce McArthur are gay serial killers.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might be
and there's so much blame that went around with that case. Like the Toronto Police Service dropping the ball for years. Cause like, and I don't use this word. I never do. But if you were a cop at that point in time, like who cares less about a gay fag than a gay visible minority fag?
I don't think you're allowed to say fag.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
I shouldn't have just said it either. YouTube, by the way, I just as a little aside, I won my last appeal with YouTube when they took down my content. And this was just today, actually.
That was the cops' mentality at the time.
I get you.
Right?
But still,
I don't use that word. I find it abhorrent.
I know, but it's reached N-word status, and you should just say the F word or something. It has, I think, for a lot of people. And you know what? As a person who,
it's not N-word status on my end, but
you're neither black or gay, so you don't really have a.
I lived in the gay village though while I was defending Bruce McArthur, so I think that
I lived in Parkdale. That doesn't mean shit.
Parkdale is just okay. Let's buy crack cocaine, but like twice,
15 times.
Yeah. No, but the point, what I'm saying is that like that was the mentality of the Toronto Police Service at the time.
Right.
And they did not care about visible minority gay men going missing. They couldn't give a shit. If you're a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl, oh, fuck. Like, they'd have been on your shit.
Well, Annie Schwartz, who wrote the book about Dahmer, actually said that the movie, the Dahmer series, was actually an unfair depiction of the police. She said that that it didn't go down the way that the movie depicted. It was a lot of creative license, and that and that the movie kind of didn't do any justice to the case. Rob, you disappeared.
No, I had to open up the window because I'm smoking.
Oh, okay, good job. You don't need to turn the camera off when you do that. It's okay. You can just go. But yeah, the police and the McArthur thing. I mean, was there a ton of evidence against him for murder, or was it the sexual assault stuff? Because I know there was a guy that got away, right? Wasn't there a guy that got away?
It was like I said, the defense of rough sex gone wrong went out the window in a hurry. Like.
Right. But what I mean is before he got caught, wasn't there a complaint made against him by a guy that he was with that he took home?
Not murder. Like, you're right. Sexual assault was very much should have been on TPS's mind. And the detectives out of, I believe it's 55 division, a couple of them got dismissed as a result of this. There was some backlash because like the thing about it is the gay lobby in Toronto has some power. And I was living in the gay village while I was defending this guy.
Oh, wow.
I lived at Church of Maitland.
I lived at Jarvis and Maitland in those two those two burgundy buildings that are side by side. Jarvis and Maitland. I lived in there.
Little walk up on Maitland.
I loved living in the gayborhood.
Oh, dude, it was great. Like I'd go out and get hit on left, right, and center. And I'm not.
Yeah, me too.
It was fucking brilliant. Like.
Yeah, I'd get my ass slapped when I'd be walking by. Remember the Church in Wellesley Starbucks or whatever, the Second Cup or the Starbucks?
Oh,
whatever
that was like the pickup central. That was,
dude. You couldn't. It was like a cockfight in so many different ways when you would walk by there. And because I'm 5'6" and like at the time I had a baby face and shit,
I'd get catcalled. I'd be like, oh
yeah,
thanks for the tire pump.
Right. Yeah, you'd feel good. Like I'd walk home from the subway at like Queen and at Wellesley, at Wellesley and Young, and I would walk home and I'd almost prepare myself for it. Like, okay, you're not gay, but you're gonna feel really good about yourself by the time you get to Maitland.
Yeah, like, oh, I'd be looking like a bag of dicks coming out of the office, like
They
tie all
love bags of dicks. I'm just
Oh
saying.
yeah, no, but
Yeah.
like tie all over the place, and I'd be getting catcalled, and I got to strut in my step by the time I hit my block, like just like
Right. If you joined us late, this hilarious show is about serial killers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not gay guys hitting on straight guys, not at
No.
all.
Okay, so we have to go. So I want to pivot just quickly because I want to reestablish something that we are going to be doing in the near future, and it's called Heinous Cases. And what we did is we took Christy Blatchford's book. What's the book called again? There it is. Yeah, Life Sentence, and it's
from 4 decades of court reporting, or how I fell out of love with the Canadian justice system. In brackets, especially judges, and half of the cover's blacked out because she had some other shit to say that she couldn't publish.
Oh,
And
so
for
Christy Blatchford,
Christy to go there and like when Christy couldn't publish something, it was fucking scandalous.
Well, that's right. Christy Blatchford, just to give some background, because I'm really excited about this. I'm kind of glad we waited a little bit too, because we both had stuff going on, but also it gave us a more robust idea. So what we're doing is we're taking the chapters of Christy's book and we're going to create a podcast.
Smoking the whole time on the podcast, by the way.
Yes, that's fine. And we're going to take Christy Blatchford's book and we're going to take each chapter, which is a different case. So she covers she covers Paul Bernardo, she covers Gian Gomeshi, did she cover Bruce McArthur? I don't think so.
No, she wasn't alive for that, or like not meaning like she was not well. Like Batesh to Duffy, Abraha, Elliott, like Bernardo, Gomeshi, etc. Like she covers, like touches on Milgard, like some of the seminal case, and like these are guys that I came up with. Like I worked for the successor to Pinkovsky's, and he was involved in that. You know,
that's
like.
Right. So now one of the reasons I was friends with Christy Blatchford, I was her neighbor for about a decade. We saw each other all the time. She used to flirt with me, and it used to make me blush because she knew how much I respected her. Right. And one day I was like 27, I think at the time. And I was kind of being like on purposely cute. I was like, Christy, do you think, like, she was going to China to cover the Olympics. And I was like, do you need like, yeah, I'm like, you wouldn't happen to need like, you know, an awkward looking assistant or something to come with you to China? And she'd be like, first of all, you don't qualify. And she came up to me and she put her finger on my chin and went like this, because she's telling me that I was cute, I guess, and not awkward looking. And then I was like, okay. And then as I walked away, all I felt was right on my ass. And I was just like, I love this woman.
Yeah. No, well, I met Christy. It was like my early days as I was working for the same firm, Royal and Partners, great firm in Toronto. If you're looking for a start in criminal defense, they do great work. Mm-hmm. And I was working, and I was at Old City Hall. I had like a big list of clients that I had to speak to, and I was stressed out of my mind because about a half a dozen judges tore a strip out of me. And not the first time. And I went outside. I was having a butt. Yeah, exactly. I know, right? I was having a butt, and she comes up to me. She asked me for a light.
Oh,
and like I was trying to impress her. I'm like,
did you do the with Zippo thing where you're like?
Yeah. Like I off my dress shirt pants, like or off my dress pants, like.
People don't understand how she had such a huge presence. She was tiny as fuck.
Yeah. And she was like 6'5".
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And she would like, and her presence were like could make people, grown ass men, just kind of melt a little bit, because of the respect that you had for her intellect, for her straightforwardness. You know what I mean? Like she would be
I'm a big dude. I'm like 6'1", 250. Like I'm a big guy, and like she just walked up to me and like, you got a light? And I was like, yes, yeah. And I knew who she was. Yes,
anything. Would you like grapes and a fan?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And she was like, and I knew who she was, and then what do you read? And I was like, well,
what do you drive?
I'm like, I don't read The Sun. Like I was trying to impress her.
I said the same thing to her, but I was in my 20s.
I was like trying to impress her. I was like,
and she was like, why not?
I couldn't line a puppy cage with that, and she was just like, Rob, you need to read everything.
We had the exact same conversation, me and her, when I was like 26, 27, like the exact same conversation. She was like, what do you read? I said everything. I was like, everything except for The Sun. She's like, well, you're doing it wrong. And she was right, because you need to know what, different sides of,
you need to know the idiot, like with The Sun, right? I don't even know who they're writing to anymore, but whatever. We'll talk about that's another fucking.
Every time someone says the Toronto Sun, I picture Brian Lilly in a gag ball every single time. because I don't know if you've seen it, but Karima and I work together on this thing. I call Karima up and I'm like, Karima, you doing cartoons this week? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, can I give you an idea? She's like, okay. And I'm like, because you know how his girlfriend is you know how his girlfriend is Doug Ford's. His girlfriend is Doug Ford's press secretary.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is my idea. Now you can just tell me to fuck off if you think it's too much. She's like, okay. I'm like, Brian Lilly in a gag ball with a female hand holding his hair saying, Brian, you'll write what we tell you to write.
Yeah.
She's like, I love it. And then it happened.
Oh, yeah,
it's the greatest. Go. It's so good.
That cartoon has way better hair than that loser.
Yeah, I know. That guy has his hair looks like if Conan O'Brien became a meth head.
If Conan O'Brien fucking had a rough 5 years, it became me. That's what his hair looks like.
It's actually the Conan O'Brien toupee. It's not even hair. it's something like that. Anyway, so I love getting sidetracked with Christy Blatchford. I miss her so much. I
miss Christy, one of the last bastions of honest journalism in this country.
I know, and so many people thought she was a fucking Nazi and all that shit, and it was just like, oh my god,
idiots.
Yeah, she had views that you might not agree with on, especially when it came to Indigenous issues and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's not like she hated Indigenous people. It's just that she was so principled to evidence and principled to being able to ascertain evidence and come up with an idea as to where it was pointing to, and she would defend people if they were wrongly accused of something, whether that was cops or someone on the left. And she often defended people on the left, and they just ignored it so that they could call her a Nazi the next time she was critical about something else, right? It was
yeah. No, which is an easy cop-out when you're not actually analyzing what somebody has to say.
That's right. So anyway, so we are going to continue heinous cases. We are going to take Christy Blatchford's book, and we're going to do most of the cases from that book, and that will be each episode. So I can't wait to do that.
2 seconds to see if I did well here.
You didn't. You cut me off too many times. The whole lighting thing, the fact that you turned off your camera. No, you did fine. I liked it. I like ending a podcast on a lighter note like that anyway. So I'm so happy that you're here. We're gonna probably aim for next.
Everybody, thanks for listening.
I think we're gonna aim for next week for the heinous cases, but we'll get back to everybody on that. And so Rob, I'll hear from you in a couple minutes, and I'll tell you how horrible you did on the podcast.
The first of the 6-part Paul Bernardo heinous cases, because we did Karla Homolka.
Sort of.
That one. That's
we were disorganized. I think.
Yeah, you were. I was fine.
Yeah, me. Yeah, the guy that. Yeah, forget it. Never mind.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, buddy. Thanks, man. Rob Kavikalian. I was saying Kavikalian or Kavikalian or something for months and months. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. Thank you again to Ann Schwartz as well. I don't even know what my next show is right now yet. I'll probably want to throw something on Thanksgiving just to be contrarian. So I hope you guys tune into whatever that will be. And now what I'm going to do is say goodbye to Leanne and Jen and Kathleen. I feel like the romper room lady. I see Jen and Kathleen. And you have the mirror. Remember the mirror? And DaCosta. And I see you. That was a really creepy part of romper room because it was like, how the fuck does she see me? And there's no fucking glass in that mirror, bitch. What's going on? I can't remember what that woman's name was. Anyways, Polka Dot Door, though. That was the show. Romper Room was part of Polka Dot Door. Isn't that how it worked? Something like that. Anyways, I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks again to Annie Schwartz, and thank you to Rob Kavikalian, and we will see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.